Hello, Pittsburgh. I'm Zac Gibson, and this is TribLive's From the Newsroom podcast, bringing you top stories from TribLive.com. 2024 is quickly coming to a close, and this year has seen many striking moments. A passionate and polarizing presidential race, countries competing against one another as the world cheered on their favorite athletes, international conflicts that caused strife, and the cultural shifts that followed. Here in Western Pennsylvania, TribLive has been there for all of 2024's most impactful moments. Director of Visuals, Stipp, joins me today to discuss TribLive's year in review. Hi, Sean. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Zach. Thanks for having me.
So, to get started, I want you to tell me about 2024 as you've experienced it in your position as the Director of Visuals.
2024 has been a busy year, to say the least, particularly since the summer election season kicked off in full swing. But it's also been an amazing year in Western Pennsylvania and internationally, as you've noted. I've had a lot of big events, from the assassination of former President Donald Trump in Butler to the debut of Paul Skeens at PNC Park and his triple-digit fastball.
Can you introduce to us, for the audience who might not be familiar, the year in review and how you go about picking?
So we gather a bunch of images that we shot from the year that we think are the best. Each photographer submits to me about 20 or 30 images that are either extremely visual photographs or extremely important news events. And then we try to select a balance between them, where we want to acknowledge some of the major news events and cultural events that have happened. But we also want to show some of those like serendipitous daily life moments that you just can't plan. And so we just try to pick a balance, and the hope is that you'll walk away with a sense of the region and the people that live in it.
I understand there's about 33 images in this year's year in review. My first question for you, is there a story or image from this year that stands out to you most, and what is it about that makes it stand out?
Well, the first image is Shane Dunlap's photographs of the assassination attempt on Donald Trump.
Okay.
Shane's a longtime photojournalist, and he had the presence of mind to not only duck, but to stand back up and continue to photograph these compelling events. And so the images are just exceptional. I mean, these are defining moments in the world, and they happen in our region, and we are lucky enough to have some professional photojournalists to record them. Some other images that really stood out to me this year was a profile of a young man named Seth Apel, who was in a farming accident when he was a kid, like a teenager. He spent 7 years in rehab, and he had his arm connected back on. But what he did was share with us a glimpse of his experience, and out of that came a series of portraits that show Seth in a way that allows us to see that scar, sort of what it represents in terms of not only his physical healing, but the sense of pride and dignity he carries in the photo gives you a sense that he's also healed emotionally as well, or at least some degree. And so, those opportunities to share those images with our audience is a blessing.
Okay. Now, I spoke with Shane on the Trump assassination attempt photo and his experience at that rally, and it really speaks to how much a photographer, and many of our Trib photographers, how capable they are to be able to focus on the objective at hand in stressful situations and hectic situations, and just situations of high importance. Like, nobody can plan for something like that to happen. But when it did, both Ryan and Shane were there and were able to stay on top of the job and get as much information, both visually and for the story, as they could.
Yeah, Shane's a pro, and you have to put yourself in his shoes. It was a hot day in July. He's in the baking sun, and he's waiting. It's a hurry up and wait situation for any political event, high level political event like that, where the Secret Service wants you in fast, and they want you in now, and then you're just going to wait. And during that period of time, it's easy to slip into complacency, and it's easy to think, oh, this is just another political rally that's going to go off without any hitch. until something happens.
Mhm.
And that something happens also threatens everybody's lives in that arena, from the former president to people on the stage to the journalists and the people in the audience. And Shane had the presence of mind to A, first duck, and then B, stand back up and continue to shooting once he deemed it was appropriate to do so. And out of it came a series of images that showed the former president, wounded, and that was a big moment, not only in Western Pennsylvania and in Butler County where it happened, but in America and globally. And we have photojournalists there to cover these historic moments, to document it for history, and to inform our audience the next day.
Okay. So in this year in review, our audience will see a mixture from pictures like that, a very notable appearance, and you could pick exactly what story they're from. And you'll also see a lot of local potent moments. My second question for you is, how do you approach that balance between capturing raw, unfiltered moments and maintaining journalistic ethic?
So it's not so much of a difficult balance. It's more of the individual photographer being constantly aware.
Mm,
So what we're going to do is we're going to schedule a wide variety of assignments. We're going to schedule a political rally. We're going to schedule a news event, a portrait for a profile. But throughout the course of that, they're traveling the region. They're at different events, and where the balance comes in is having this sense of visual storytelling abilities so that you're able to extract these moments, and many of them are just serendipitous. They come out of nowhere. They're community events or kids, an event with a clown, or something that seems so daily and so basic, but given the right perspective, given the photographer to see these moments and record them, really captures a moment in time that is able to convey a story and allow the audience to develop a deeper appreciation for those moments, and for just sort of for life in general. We live in an amazing world, an amazing region, and it's easy to slip into complacency in daily life, whether you're a photojournalist or not a photojournalist, just a person living their life. But when you come through the end of the year, and I think the reason why we do these collections is it's a chance to look back
mm.
on how amazing our lives are. And you can see that within the span of 1 year, we're able to capture this wide range of human events and emotion. We're really grateful to be able to do that. A lot of us got into this field because we deeply loved it, and we're always thinking about connecting with our audience, and the ability to do this and make this our livelihoods is a fun thing to do.
A little bit further on that point, in an earlier conversation, I remember you saying, talking about our process for photographers and the fact that we don't stage photos. Can you tell me a little bit about what it's like for our photographers within the constraints of journalistic photography trying to really tell a story through their cameras?
Sure. So 2024 really saw the emergence of generative fill and artificial intelligence. And we are now seeing images and video online circulating that just are not real.
Mm-hmm.
We take great pride in a photojournalism tradition that dates long, long before my time, which is to not stage anything. We are there to see events unfold, and we go to great lengths to coordinate that and to develop rapport with subjects so we're able to get there for these moments. Another thing that we take great pride in is not using any additional post processing to add or take anything away from the photo. We keep our adjustments to basic tonal ranges and solid photography technique.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's something that we all observe. It's something that's very important to me as the director that the staff take into account, but we never run into any problems with it because it's a sort of defining characteristic of a photojournalist, that the sense of pride that we get from these images is that they are real moments in time. We weren't there to affect the event in any way.
Mm-hmm.
We were just simply there to record it and document it. And that's where serendipity lives, is in that place where preparation and expectations encounter something wholly unique and different. And out of it comes something that nobody's expected. And those are often the most jaw dropping photos that one can make.
Okay. So, sticking with your team in the photography department, what challenges did you and your team face this year in terms of logistics, access, or safety while covering major events?
Well, I think a trend that's been sort of increasing over the last decade is people's resistance to photojournalists.
Okay.
And it's something that I think has grown out of the camera phone and social media age, where a lot of people are just feeling inundated by it. And, I think what is so awesome about professional photojournalists and photojournalism is that, we're doing the exact opposite thing. We're really taking into account, you know, the fairness, the dignity, the presentation of these subjects in a way that it's not random, it's not haphazard. We are making these decisions not only in the camera as the moments are unfolding, but we're really making thoughtful editing decisions so that we're representing our subjects with dignity, and we're representing these events in an accurate way,
Hmm.
so that we're not editorializing, we're not creating stories that don't exist. We're simply using them to document. And that's really the power of the camera. You can go all the way back to the history of the camera from the Civil War. And it's just an amazing thing to be able to see something with your own eyes. And I think, again, as the camera phone has inundated society, the value of an image seems to have lowered, or sort of like decreased, because there are so many images,
Mm,
right? You think back in Civil War times, there may have only been a handful of cameras on the continent. So
right.
every image that was created was extremely valuable. Now everybody has a camera phone and they're creating dozens of images, hundreds of images a week. We really, again, set ourselves apart from that by being professionals, by planning, by gaining meaningful access where we're welcome into situations and people want to share these experiences with us. And in situations where it's breaking news and these are unplanned moments, we really rely on that professionalism, again, to guarantee accuracy and the dignity of our subjects. And we just take a lot of pride in it, and everybody on the staff has dedicated their lives to doing this.
Hmm.
And so that makes my job easy, because everybody wants to go out and make great photographs every day. There's just no question about that. It doesn't always happen, but sometimes it does. And it's just an amazing thing when you get those career defining moments that you can say, wow, this is one of the best images that I've taken. And that's usually not an accolade towards yourself. It's usually a sense that you've honored this process, that you've learned this craft, and you're just trying to share it.
All right. Now, I'm aware, and I'm sure, well, I know you're aware, but for our viewers that aren't aware, there are a lot of photographers with TribLive that have been here for a very long time. With all of the photographers here at TribLive, how do you guide the team when it comes to identifying the most compelling visual narratives when covering a breaking story?
So, you know, generally speaking, they're all extremely competent. Our sports photographers, Chaz Pala and Chris Horner, are just usually doing sports. Not just usually, it's quite a lot of work, but they usually concentrate on sports. And so they develop rapport with the sports teams and the fans and everybody involved, so that they are able to get the best access to stay on top of the information that's emerging out of these beats, just in the way a writer does. Because actually, if you think about it, a photographer has to not miss the moment, right? Like a writer can miss it and like type it up later,
Right.
but if a photographer misses it, it's a fleeting moment, it's gone. And so it's really important that they all have that ability to have that sense of storytelling abilities, so that whatever they encounter, they're able to extract those moments. And I have a particularly talented staff of people. I like to give shout outs to all of them, but most notably, we have some really incredible veterans. Masood Hosseini is a 2011 Pulitzer Prize winner for breaking news photography of images he captured at a suicide bombing in Kabul.
Mm-hmm.
And Chaz Pala is an award-winning sports photojournalist that has been in the game since 1986. And in 2015, Chaz's photo of Mike Tomlin was put into the Hall of Fame. I think it's the Ernie Crisp Award. So, that's the Hall of Fame themselves selecting the very finest images of all the images that were shot in that year. And you just think about it. Every time a sports photographer pushes a button, they're firing off 12 pictures in a second.
Right.
So we're taking a lot of pictures, and to be the one that is recognized at that level is truly incredible. And the photos that he gets aren't just haphazard. He has a sense of what he's trying to convey and the stories, and being so connected to the information and the beat that he's able to see things and extract things in a way that, the average person might not be able to. And then you combine that with some photographic talent, some long lenses, and some really good equipment, and we're able to really create a sense of insight for the viewer that, I think is the backbone of what it is we do.
So, moving to my last question here, with photography becoming more accessible, and I know you mentioned smartphones and social media and the evolutions in photography that has brought, how has the role of professional news photographers evolved this year for us, and where do you see it going?
So I think, in the last decade and a half, it was the emergence of digital cameras and camera phones made a lot of people jump to conclusions and say, well, this is the death of photojournalism. Just average people on the street can do this now. And we've seen that's not the case. We've seen that the technology and the cameras are only part of that. Learning to be a good technical photographer is a lot easier than learning to be a great journalist with insight. And so really to just relegate them as being, bubble quotes, just photographers is overly simplistic, because what these people are journalists, and they're out there observing and telling stories with pictures in a way that's incredibly difficult to do. Because again, you have to address that notion that people need to feel comfortable with you being there. They have to trust your judgment on the back end that you're going to represent them in a dignified and responsible way. And when you can create that environment where you're a fly on the wall, and it's not easy to do with these big cameras, what comes out of it is just this great sense of what it's like to be human, right? Not just a Western Pennsylvania, but just a human. We live in an amazing world, and there's just so much going on, from news, sports, cultural events to daily lives, that it's a real privilege and honor to be able to make images based around that. This isn't one scenic after another. This isn't HDR images created for social media and calendars to get likes.
Right.
These images are meant to be historical records. They're meant to serve as information for the next day.
Right.
And we take that responsibility seriously every day that we go out. And I always like to really thank the bosses here, because the media landscape over the last 10 or 15 years has seen visual departments' budgets cut. And we still maintain a healthy staff, 2 professional photographers dedicated to sports. That's professional sports and high school sports and college sports. And then we have an additional staff of 4 others and myself. And so that gives us the ability to really fan out and to really try to extract the best. And as you know, just like on anything, hunting, fishing, any collectible, you don't pull the winning card every time, and it can't be perceived as failure, right? And that's the attitude we all have. We go out there, we try, and sometimes we get some great stuff, and sometimes it's just meh, it's okay. But you don't let it stop you. Again, I said that, serendipity is the thing that we're chasing, where images and the stories that they convey far exceed what anybody had imagined they could ever be. And it happens quite a bit. And if you look at this collection of images, you'll see it happen again and again and again. And, these hardworking photojournalists, they're out there every day grinding. It's hot, it's cold. People are barking at them sometimes. Sometimes they're welcome, sometimes they're not. Either way, they're putting their blood, sweat, and tears into this job, and what comes out of it is a thing of beauty.
Okay. Well, Sean, that's all the questions I have for you today. Thank you for coming on to tell us about 2024's year in review.
Thanks, Zach. It's a great opportunity to share what we love.
Thanks for joining. If you enjoyed this week's episode, share the podcast to help keep Western PA locally informed with insightful discussion and the latest news from your area. It's an easy way to spread the word, and it helps our podcast reach more people like you. Don't forget to follow us on Spotify and turn on episode notifications so you never miss new content. Once again, I'm Zac Gibson, and this is From the Newsroom.